Welcome to Founders Raw.
Thank you.
All right, Patrick, founder of AmpTab.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to do is we're just gonna have a good conversation. I want to go back into your story, so maybe walk me through what your first experience with entrepreneurship, and let's go back.
I've got a kind of a funny story. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, literally. The day Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, I went out and collected ashes with my sister, and we mixed it with Portland cement and made figurines, and then had a stand on the side of the road. And I grew up about 3 blocks from the original Microsoft campus. Back then, it wasn't there. It was called 80 Acres.
Yeah.
And so that was my first business at 6.
6 years old.
6 years old. And then since then, I've done all kinds of crazy stuff. In high school, I did, obviously the paper out thing. Everyone did that. And, I did a car restoration deal with a buddy in high school. And then after that, I went to college, and I was fortunate to be able to go and I played volleyball at San Diego State, so I was able to go to college.
Oh, awesome. After
college, I started my first company called Craftsman Finish Carpentry. And this is the McMansion boom down in Southern California. I rode that and started a cabinet shop, started building houses, and moved back home to Seattle in 2002 and started building again. Mm-hmm. And then got into, started a couple restaurants and a couple other things, and ultimately led me to software, because software is awesome.
Yeah, you're right. No, that's an entrepreneur right there, right? Mm-hmm. So let's go back to, for instance, your youth. What, going forward from that experience with being 6 years old, where was it that you realized, what point in your life did you realize, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to be a business owner, I'm going to just do my own thing?
I've actually thought about that quite a bit. And there's one of the things I left out is, so I raced BMX bikes when I was a kid, so I always had parts, and I always knew how to work my bike. And I ended up having what I called Patrick's Bike Shop in our garage. And so all the kids would come by, and it's not like I collected money. But at some point in, I was probably in 5th or 6th grade, I discovered the word entrepreneur. And I remember writing a report saying I'm going to be an entrepreneur when I grow up. And it was all related to Patrick's Bike Shop and, just that specific age. And, it wasn't a fireman or a doctor or a lawyer or any of that stuff. Just vaguely, the idea of just doing whatever the hell I want sounded really freaking cool.
Oh, yeah.
And I grew up in an extremely loose household, meaning I could do whatever I wanted, dismantling tools and radios. And so I just loved to learn and discover new things.
Just like tinker and just
constantly, and usually pissing off my dad and whatever. But I found I was very good at figuring things out mechanically and just in general. And so I just could do just about anything. Whenever I wanted to do, I just learn it quickly and figure out how to do it. And as I grew older, I fell back on construction after college, because my dad had a construction company, and I knew it. Yeah. And I'm a 5th generation cabinet builder, so that was why I started a finish carpentry company and a cabinet shop. And I just had this insatiable thirst for more. So I just never wanted to have a lifestyle business. Mm-hmm. I'd always just, how can I grow this cabinet shop? What's the next thing? The logical step from cabinet shop was going into building houses, all these things. Yeah. So it's interesting, just, keeping moving forward with something new is kind of.
So given that, which I think is a really interesting background, do you think entrepreneurs are natural? It's just like they are born like that? Or do you think you were influenced early on? Sounds like your dad had his own company and all that. How do you think that happens?
It's interesting because we're in this culture here, and we're around all entrepreneurs, and it's not like there's one shoe. It's not like we all just go and we all put on our brown entrepreneur shoes. There's red ones and green ones, and when I see a tech guy that went through a structured education, was at Microsoft for 15 years, and then one day said, I'm out, and then started a company. That's a completely different entrepreneur than me. But they're still successful, and they're, so I think that when you look at someone, a non-technical type entrepreneur, there's a different type of an animal, where everything in my life was non-structured. I don't go with the flow. I was never a good student.
Yeah.
I'd made it work and, got through, but I think that, I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but.
No, I mean, I think it's nuanced, right? And there's, what I find is it's really the root is curiosity. And it sounds like you were just curious and you tinkered and, I mean, fixing bikes and stuff like that at that age. That so I think what I've seen is entrepreneurs are curious.
Yeah.
And then they get curious and they go into certain industries and whatnot. But I also think, what I'm taking from your story is you kind of broke rules. And I'm the same way in the sense that, I kind of look at rules and you say, what's over on the other side of the rule, right? And I think that's a natural tendency of an entrepreneur is to actually find the edge and push forward. Yeah. And because that's the only way innovation happens is when you need to like push to the next level.
It's one of the things that I live by is there's roadblock people and there's detour people.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs are detour people. You never ever run into a roadblock. No matter how hard it is or whatever, you figure out a way around it. And I think that's a big key to what we do is that anything comes up, a client asks for something specific, it's never no. We can find a workaround. Even within the constraints of our software, most of the time we say, well, here's what I understand you want. Here's what we can do for the time being until we can code something better. And if you don't have that mindset and you're not constantly looking for detours, then you're not going to be an entrepreneur.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would be, we call this founders raw for a reason. So let's go back in time and think about some of the toughest times that you've had. And what I want to do is take the layers off and figure out how you got through that. Name like something that pops out that's like, man, that was a difficult experience. Yeah,
we're living, through the past year, we've been living a lot of difficult things just with this particular company, and it's perseverance through cash flow. You know, how and this resonates with anybody who's doing a startup, or any business in general. What about that month where you can't make payroll? And one of your employees has to pay rent, and you say, I don't have anywhere to get the money, and if you just leave it at that, you're kind of screwed, and you can't do anything. But 2 days, a day goes by, you work it out. You get money from somewhere, you pull it together. And I've seen that through every business. I've had a few businesses that just took off, When you're in construction, you don't start a company and just put up a shingle and, sit there and twiddle your thumbs. Yeah. Typically, you have one client that got you started, So you have an immediate revenue. In software, I've been doing this for 2 years. We haven't collected a check yet. Yeah. We're going to collect the check in a couple weeks, and that's awesome. Going to feel really good. Yeah. And it's different. My first check in my first company as an adult was, a few grand, but I got it after 2 days of work. So it's a different type of a cookie. Yeah. That cookie was $3,000. That seemed pretty big at the time, but right now a check for $500 is going to be this massive cookie that I can't even pick up.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah. So what did you do? Like, what are some things that helped you get through those tough times? Like, I'm sure it's mental. I'm sure it's
mental. It's avoiding the tailspin. You can sit there and say, what I'm going to do, but you pull up and you get out of that tailspin, and you just don't think about the bad shit. Yep. Completely avoid it. And
but for you, is that like getting around other people? Is that just taking a time out? Like,
sometimes it's a time out. Sometimes you just don't think about the problem. And I found that to be fairly key. One of the things that you get better at as an adult is communicating with other people when you're going through these. When I was younger, I internalized it. Yep. I'd have like the worst crap going on, and I wouldn't tell anyone in my family, and I'd just be quiet. And now, I'm much better, working through it with the employees. Everyone understands, and it helps with the culture. Yeah. So, but to answer your question, as a specific coping skill for dealing with, to persevere through, bad situations, it's this odd thing, and I guess we all have it, is that you don't know why or you don't know how, but it's just going to work out. Yeah. And, most of the times it does. Yeah. So.
Well, and that's optimism, right? And one thing I find with most founders is they have an inordinate level of optimism that basically gets them through those tough times. Like I've been there. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's like you literally, it's a fine line between, like a bit crazy and being optimistic and realistic. And if you can, what I've noticed is you have to stand on that line, and sometimes you do have to be crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way to get through some of the difficult times. Just being optimistic and knowing that tomorrow someone's going to walk in, someone's going to send an email, someone's going to make a phone call, totally change it.
So it's another day. I think that if you focus on the negative too much, between the different types of founders, one of the things is that if I get overwhelmed by something and if I stay focused on it, I stop hustling. And the way you get out of this stuff is by hustling.
Yeah.
And that's something that's resonated with us, and especially with this, we've seen a lot of negative things come up, but we've worked through it, and everything that's been negative has turned into a massive positive because we worked through that pain, and we never go back to it.
Yeah.
So
you have your history is in sales.
Yeah, I mean, I've owned my own company, so you're a salesman.
Yeah, exactly. What I've noticed with a lot of startups around here is they struggle with that. What did you learn in your past that you're now applying to your company? Because you're now basically sales with your company. So what are some lessons that you learned early on?
One thing that I do, and you ask anyone on my team, that they have this thing of Patrick knows everyone. And I have there's certain people that have the skill, is that anyone I ever meet, I immediately process how our relationship will work out. Yeah. And in a weird way, it's not in a opportunistic thing. It's just, lots of times I meet someone, for example, I met a guy on the airplane to Mississippi a few months ago, and he was part of the New England Journal of Medicine. And I visited with him and I found out what he was doing, and I ended up talking to him about Don Rule, one of the other founders down here. And he got real excited about what Don's doing, and I brought his card back and gave it to Don. But so long story short, where I'm going is that for sales, the key to sales is networking. And you never lose that networking pipe, because you can always go back no matter what you pivot to or what new job you have or new business. As long as you keep sight of that entire network, you're going to find somebody that can help you out.
So a lot of people are uncomfortable with networking, which obviously me and you, I see a similarity. It just comes natural. Yeah. But what about the people that actually they think it's a chore or a activity, when in reality what you're saying is you just be nice to people, talk to people, connect with people? Yeah,
it's funny because people ask me all the time, when should I call them back? How soon should I send an email? And there isn't an answer to it. And there's certain things, someone asked me, I just sat down with a guy the other day, he was asking about my success for our investment round right now. And he asked me, when should I respond? And I said, it's an investor. The second he responds to you, you get back to him as fast as possible. That's your fire drill. Yeah. And, no, I should wait a week. It's like a high school date. You don't call back for 3 days or whatever the rule is. No, it's, you're hustling. You're going to get it done. Then the other aspect is that when you're doing sales or you land a sale, is that there's client training. Is that you don't want to respond to a client directly immediately because they get used to it. And then when you don't, they get pissy. You see, I emailed you yesterday, you didn't respond. Yeah. So it's just a skill, and there's not an answer. It's organic. It's an animal. It changes every time. Every deal's different. So when there's certain people that I might say you probably shouldn't be in sales at all, and then there's other people that are willing to go in there. If you have that fear of communicating with people, then you're out. Yeah. But you can. There's a lot of stuff out there. You use the right CRM. You build the right pipeline and use the right tools, and you can do that. But
are you metric driven on the weekly, monthly basis? How do you run your approach to a sales process?
Yeah, we're implementing. The way we've sold to date has been purely through me, through a network that I've built, and it's kind of a cherry pick situation. So we'll be building metrics as soon as we start launching in 2 weeks. We'll be building those metrics. Okay. We have this pipeline, and we're going to funnel it. We're going to start outsourcing phone campaigns and things like that. So we'll use the traditional funnel. Yeah. But I have my own funnel. It's a 7-step process, and it seems to work very well. So, and it's something I can teach any salesman coming in to follow. So,
what are those? Just list them off. What are those 7 steps? I mean, do you have them on top of your head?
Not directly, because we're morphing it right now. But essentially, a 7 is a contact that you've never touched before, and a 1 is a client.
Okay.
So it's different stages in between.
Yeah.
And each stage dictates the communication level. So you're not gonna spam someone that doesn't know who the hell you are.
Exactly.
If someone is a contact and we've never met them, I wouldn't even send them an email because it's spam. They don't want it, So you have to figure out a way to get in communication with them. One of the things that I do is I don't like to just randomly call somebody I don't know. I don't believe in cold calling. Although we will outsource cold calling, I don't want my sales guys cold calling. So we'll have vetted, warmed up leads that will.
So is that like, are you using LinkedIn? Are you using just natural physical network?
Yeah, we'll be using a handful of sales tools. LinkedIn will be one, outsourcing calls. These markets that we sell at, we have a unique opportunity with these markets. It's like fish in a barrel. We have access to decision makers. And that's really where we're gonna build our pipe.
Yeah.
They're vetted, qualified contacts because they're at the market, and we'll be leveraging that. That will be the fastest way to close a sale.
Interesting.
So,
I'm definitely a leadership student. I love leadership. Do you have a history in what's your history in leadership in terms of like running your companies? Obviously, you're managing people. Obviously, you're trying to run the ship.
Right.
So.
It's. I tend to not. Think of myself as a leader, but obviously, I am, and I've been, in different stages in my life. When I've managed people, I've been a pretty bad manager or leader, and part of the things that's different about software is that I'm not dealing with, these drones that say, do this, and I have to manage them on a daily basis. Right now, I have, extremely smart people on our team, and they don't need direction, but we need to have a shared vision. And then we need to understand goals and milestones. Yeah. I'm not managing them, on a day-to-day basis necessarily, and it's taken a while for me to get used to that because in the past it was like a morning powwow with a crew. Yeah. And do this, and you basically dictate and yell at people, and that's how you get stuff done in a restaurant or a construction company. With this, it's a different set of tools. There's not micromanaging. I believe in these people. We've hired really smart people, and that's been the key to our success.
So what do you find that they respond to the best, especially software-oriented teams?
It's kind of the kudos side of it. We all have a shared vision. We know where it's going, and everyone hits a milestone, and we celebrate. Now, celebration for us, we're not the best celebrating guys, but we're working on that. We got a bottle of liquor in the cabinet for milestones.
Crack it open.
But we're going to work on that. We're going to make sure. But that's the thing is that you get a core of people that believe and have this drive. They don't want to stop and have a beer. Yeah. You feed off that and you do the next thing. Yeah. So we need to make sure we celebrate.
Well, and I think part of that's culture, right? And so you within building a culture in a team. Mm-hmm. There's certain practices and certain things that you create naturally that allow for the team to, celebrate certain milestones and stuff. And I think it's obviously unique for every company. Right. And you got to find that. You as a leader or organically it just happens. Right. But I do think it's important that teams actually stop. You have to stop and acknowledge what we just did. Yeah. Because this, at a certain point, if you don't do that, the team just runs out of steam. Right. They're like, what are we doing here? Mm-hmm. So really celebrating the little wins, the small ones. Yeah. You're going to get a check here soon. Yeah. You got to celebrate that.
Yeah, we're going to, that'll be a big deal.
We're going to go out.
You're going to figure out, how to mount the check on on the wall.
Yeah, so. But I think it's so important. And, the teams that I built, I really think it's respect. Mm-hmm. And it's actually... you're not best friends, that you're not going out every night together, but at the same time, you have to have respect. Everyone has to deeply respect every team member, or it ain't going to work. Right. And that's what I've noticed success-wise for my teams is if everyone gets to the point where they fully respect and they would jump in front of a bus, that's
Right.
when you know you got something. So.
Yeah, I feel like we've been fortunate. It's one thing, when you get a bunch of smart people in a room, there's a lot of battles.
Oh yeah.
But it's all for the greater good.
Yeah.
And
So-
that's the beauty of it. The battles. We almost endorse the battles.
So how do you determine a winner in those battles?
I'm kind of the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
But I kind of get in the middle of a techie battle,
Yeah.
and I'm not a techie.
Yeah.
So I'll sit there and watch them for 5 minutes, and then I say, okay, high level. Here's what I hear from you.
Yeah.
Here's what I hear from you, and we meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately what you end up battling is that there's an ultimate solution, and then there's a short-term solution, and you have a path to the ultimate solution, and that's really kind of determining that path. We all know the ultimate,
Yeah.
solution. So we just tend to have sometimes different ideas of what the path is.
Yeah.
And the one thing that's great is when you see an argument, and I hate to use the word argument. I like the word battle in a loose way, because if they weren't passionate about it, they wouldn't be battling.
You're right.
And if a guy just was passive and said, "Well, whatever, just frickin' do it,"
Yeah.
then
No, that's like the death
Yeah.
of the company, in my opinion.
Yeah.
When you start saying stuff like that,
Yeah.
So I think battles are important. It's just figuring out the way to manage those and process it and then go forward.
right,
But I think that comes back to respect. If two people are battling and they respect each other, it's all about the greater good of the company.
Right.
Oh, you're right. I now see your way, all that kind of stuff. But if they don't respect each other, they're for sure gonna.
Right.
It's gonna be a bad deal.
yeah,
So we're here in Surf Incubator. You're around a lot of companies now, a lot of startups,
Right.
varying success. What do you see from your perspective of the successful ones, and what are they doing right? And what do you see of the unsuccessful ones, and what are they doing wrong?
It's hard to point a finger at who's successful and who's not. I think you were here a month before me.
Yeah.
Literally we were the first guy.
Yeah. It was very, very.
I was April of last year, so
Yeah.
they started in March, right?
Yeah.
And the definition of success, I see a lot of people that have the passion and the idea, and they don't necessarily know the right way to build a business. And I think that's the biggest thing that I see is just because. Let me start over. So, and this has been my philosophy all along, is that you have to build a business first, or at least have the concept of the business first. Yeah. And I see a lot of people that, from a technology standpoint, that tend, and this may be from this, the lean startup and these other methodologies and everything. I really feel like you have to have a core idea of what the business infrastructure should look like to start. And I would find it hard to go through and build a product before I had a business plan. And I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
So I think that what would be useful for a lot of people around here is to understand that process.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. We get opinions, and it's the same. There's a lot of opinions, and everyone has an asshole and an opinion. The whole thing. We hear that, and that's the hardest thing as an entrepreneur, especially in here, is that we have access to information from every single one of us. We're going to the bathroom or the kitchen, and it's like you run across a conversation and you get input and all these things, and that's the hardest thing as a founder of a company, is what is credible information to take in.
You feel like a dog, right? Like,
yeah.
And you're right. Like, I think the best thing to do is take all that information in. You have to process it, and then you have to filter it through your specific scenario.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard to determine what the right path is. So it's interesting you mentioned in terms of the lean kind of movement and just iterating fast and basically creating a product before they have business. I think you're absolutely right that you do have to have the concept down. You do have to figure out what your model is. But I also see where it's kind of like the Facebook thing, like move fast and break things, and that's what you got to do sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
and it doesn't. I'm not saying that the lean methodology or anything like that is bad. I'm saying that, and this could go back to the networking side of it. I spent literally over a year interviewing companies before we wrote a line of code.
Yeah.
And so when we went to write our first line of code, it took a while for everyone to buy in that I knew what I was talking about. And I know, calling out Dennis, our CTO, he really wasn't sure about me until we went to the first market in January. So we worked together from August until January, and literally we walked on the floor in this massive market, and I could see it in his eyes. He's like, "You were right."
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm right because I want to be right. I feel like I'm right because we built and we took this concept and we built it based off of feedback from companies that will be using it. It's none of my feedback. I compiled all that information and built it. So, I guess I'm probably I actually followed the lean methodology to a T.
Yeah.
Because we collected the feedback. We didn't do anything. We built the product.
Yeah.
We did quick iterations. We did alpha and betas, and we built these things. We test it, we interview. But now we've accelerated and we've been able to build the product and not have to go validate every piece because we validated it.
And you just did it smart. And I think that's, if I could put another spin on it, I think you entered into it. You basically said, look, here's what I'm doing. Here's where we're going. We're going to gather the most feedback possible on the market that we're going to serve so that we can build it right the first time. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of startups have that mentality.
Right.
They're more like, hey, here's a cool idea. Let's build it. Let's see what happens. Let's go test it on the market.
Right.
And basically, they're going to determine if they have a business or not. You already determined that you're going to have a business. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of like how it looked, how it felt.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And not to say that any one is right or wrong, but I think you've done it smart. And you basically started to lay the groundwork and the path. Mm-hmm. And it was just a matter of like, kind of doing some changes here and there. But
yeah, I think people would argue with that. They say, "Oh, you spent a year before you did anything." Well, that's not right. You could have wasted a year if you didn't validate it. And I could see that, but that's where it comes into the entrepreneur. You have a gut feeling that it's going to work.
Absolutely.
And you persevere through all the bullshit that you're getting fed and the stuff you go through, and then at some point you validate you validate what your gut was telling you. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not saying I haven't been wrong. My gut hasn't been wrong before, but I've been fortunate with this, or I feel like it's been spot on.
So, given that gut feeling, what was your gut feeling that led you to start AMP?
It was going to these markets, and seeing the need for it, and it's. The pain, we constantly, as entrepreneurs, saying, what pain are you solving? Yeah. There was such a host of pains that it's like we could pick from whatever we want. And so that's where when we built the company, and it's kind of a good roundabout way of answering your question is, we identified these pains and we said, how can we surround these people with a product that covers all these pains? Yeah. So no matter who the user is, that user gets a benefit from our solution, and we address that pain straightforward. So when they say, they bring up something, this is what we find all the time, is that I talked to a client today, we got him onboarded, and he was kind of going through, a lot of people when they're in a beta early, they think that their job is to tell you what they want, and, where you should do with your business.
You should build this, you should do that.
The thing that's cool about that right now is that we're onboarding companies, and they say you should do this, and we say it's there. You should do this, it's there. I literally had a conversation for an hour today, and it was 50 things he said you should do, and I walked him through it on my computer through a screen share. All of that stuff that he wanted was there. And I don't know that a lot of people can say that, So,
Well, it shows you did your homework.
Yeah, and and it's funny, a couple things did come up that we didn't have, but I said, this is how it's coming, and this is how it is coming, and this is how it will look. So, that's a good feeling, to have that. Yeah. For a guy like that, and.
Was there a moment like it just hit you like that is a problem? I need to figure it out, or was it more like, because you've been in sales and stuff, and you I think you've dealt with this problem. Was it more just a general kind of a trend of like, man, I'm just seeing all this crap happen. Like, we need to figure this out.
Well, if you've been a salesman before and you've managed a pipeline and you've managed a sales process, so you take one specific sale and you say, how does it take to get from a romance to a check, and what's the process and all the steps along the way? And the point of where I identified this is I looked at these, this specific pain that we started to address, and it was really this paper. They're fumbling through all this paper, and every step along the way had a different type of paper. And so I looked at that and I thought, it's getting too technical for this without people understanding the product, but say you have 3,000 SKUs and someone's asking about a specific SKU and you've got to go through a paper catalog. How do you get to it? You have to flip and flip and flip. Maybe you have it dog-eared or something. Just think about that. What if you had that information like that?
Yeah.
They say it, you say, oh, here it is, and it's up, and everything related to it's there too. And they say, I like it. How many do you want? There you go. What are your payment terms? Bam, and then you process it, and it goes to the home office.
Yeah.
We build presentations. We do all these things. So, you look at how that sale goes for a guy right now. One of the things that's unique about what we're doing, we solved the problem for independent sales reps. So an independent sales rep isn't owned by one company. He literally sells for a whole bunch, up to 10, maybe more.
Which can be such a ridiculous mess of...
Right, and everyone has different process and everything. We've standardized the process. We collect their data. They all store it in a similar fashion. We collect their data and we create a streamlined process. So a guy can go in with 5 companies and he can sell them in a heartbeat.
Man, that's great. Yeah.
And that's where the term that's commonly used for these reps are multiple bag reps.
Yeah.
And it came from back when they literally carried a bag for every company. And so visually, you've seen my slide deck. The first picture is meet Roger. He's an independent sales rep, and he currently sells for 4 companies. And the picture is him carrying 4 bags. Yeah. And it resonates, it sticks, because think about that. The catalogs, the tear sheets, the order forms, the price lists. It's just all kinds of stuff.
It's surprising to me that 2013, that's still a huge issue.
Yeah, one of the things that comes up all the time is you go in and try and sell an old guy an iPad. And he goes, you don't know what you're talking about. The internet was supposed to get rid of paper. Well, but the internet's not reliable. Yeah. A native iPad app is. Yeah. So as long as you keep your freaking iPad charged, it's there. Yeah. And it's always there. And you have access to thousands of photos, in a nanosecond. So even some of the hardcore, non-believers, we've converted. Yeah. We have one guy in particular, his name is Joffrin. And the company's name is Joffrin Inc. And the guy's probably 90 years old, a couple hearing aids in, the whole deal. And he was happy to show us around his showroom, to show us how wrong we were. He walked around, showed us the paper and everything, and I said, we're not going to sell you, but I'd like to come back and visit you next market. Yeah. Came back 3 months later, saw him again, and he goes, this iPad thing is something, it's kind of cool. And, they come around because they believe it. The thing is that the amount of effort it takes to process a sale through paper, guys are taking that time and creating PDFs of these spec sheets and everything, and they're doing the work in Goodreader or something, and they're creating these presentations. It's extremely time consuming. So they realize how valuable the digital version is, and you can send the spec sheets and things like that. We've just automated the whole thing.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So you're on the fundraising trail right now. What are you seeing? How is it changing? And I don't know if you have a comparison, but what are you seeing right now that is beneficial for the entrepreneur? So that's one question. And 2, just a few lessons on, raising money. I mean, that's a tough deal.
Yeah, so a little clarification on the first part. So what have we seen in changes from when we first started to when we picked up momentum?
Well, for instance, I think it's more founder friendly now. And the Jobs Act and everything that they're passing, and I think it's changing. And secondly, you have AngelList now. You have a bunch of tools for the founder to actually raise money fairly quickly.
I'm probably the most non-traditional guy. I leveraged my own network originally, and that's been huge. I've got one of our lead investors, Tim, has been. I can't thank him enough. Literally every communication, I say thank you 5 times. And then the second side of it, what's been key for us is 9 Mile. They've introduced us to more people than I could ever get a hold of, and it's been huge. Now, independently, either one of them would have made us successful, but the combination of 2 that we've done, that's why we're ready to close this large round. And
what do you think? So, kind of moving on. What do you think the common mistakes are?
No follow-up. I think that's what I see.
From the entrepreneur?
I see that, and I'm seeing what a lot of people do, and I've seen, since I'm a networker, I introduce some people that I know to some of the investors I know. And, one of the things that I do is I like to follow up with the people that I referred.
Yeah.
And I say, how did it go with Steve? And they say, Steve never got back to me. And I go back to Steve and I say, why didn't you get back to him? Oh, I got busy. And I think that's the key, is that the follow-up is probably the number one thing that I see people failing on. And I think that goes down to anything, sales, sales or, funding.
Do you think it's because, let's say you introduce me to an investor and through an email intro, and I respond, and that person maybe just is busy and they didn't respond. Or we had one phone call, and then I followed up with a thank you or whatever, but basically the investor just didn't communicate back. Do you think people are just like dropping the baton because they're just like, okay, this investor doesn't want to talk to me?
No, I've literally seen that they don't even follow up after the introduction.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and that's not common. It's happening, but the other side of it is being prepared for any question.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to sit on other people's pitches and things like that or Q&A enough to really see, but I can tell from certain conversations I have with people, if they are asking me certain questions about how I manage my pipeline and they're trying to collect money right now, they probably shouldn't be asking for money. It's too early. They need to have that organized. If they're saying, how did you do your sales model? How do you have your burn rate? Those things. And I think if you've been on the funding trail for 6 months, it's obvious why you're not getting anything. You should be prepared. Those are the questions that get asked. How long is this? What's your runway? What's your sales model? What are your channels? You have to have all that stuff lined up. Yeah. And I think it's follow through and being prepared are definitely the key things that I've seen.
Interesting. And so it's been, how would you sum up, like in one sentence, the fundraising process?
It's awesome.
It's awesome?
I love it. I get an opportunity. I get an opportunity to brag about my company to new people. Yeah. And I love it. I'm passionate about it, and I get to go out to people, and even when it's negative, that's the thing, is that it comes back to an entrepreneur side of it, is the perseverance, is that there's gold in negative feedback, and if you don't process that and make it better after that, then you're not going to win. So
basically what you're doing is you're just embracing the whole thing and saying, you know what, this is not only fun because you're talking about your company, but two, you're going to get feedback, which actually in the end is going to be positive because you're going to make changes. But thirdly, you're just embracing. You're just embracing it.
Yeah, it's part of the process. Yeah, you can't make revenue unless you sell, and you can't sell until you have a product. Yeah, and and in technology, it's expensive to build a product. So you need funding. It's just part of the process.
So would you suggest that when you're raising money, you're basically raising money? Like, you are obviously going to take a little bit of focus off the product and doing work, but for you as a CEO, that's like a full-time job.
It is. And it's hard. You drop some balls. One of the things that I pretty much, my philosophy, and use the word funding and collecting money and things like that, I'm not looking for money, I'm looking for partners. And every time that I talk with someone as an investor, I'm actually interviewing them as much as they're interviewing us. And there are certain people that I would say...
The crazy thing is more so. Founders should more so think that way. Yeah. That's the crazy thing, is they don't.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that you can see who's going to be passionate about it immediately by the questions they ask. And you don't want to be battling with someone who's put money in. You want someone who believes in it and understands the path and as a partner in it. Partner's a loose term, but I think that we're all in it together. Yeah. And the one thing that's great about leveraging the right investors is that they have a network that you can leverage when you need things, and they're more than willing to help you out with it.
So do you sense that very quickly?
Yeah. You can tell. You can walk in a room, and within the first sentence of your pitch, you can tell if you're going to get money or not.
Wow. And that's just like the energy that they're giving off, kind of thing? Like leaning forward or sitting back?
There's an exception to every rule, but it's a sale. One of the things that you learn as a salesman, you learn how to read, the person you're selling to, and you manipulate your pitch based off of the energy and their feedback and their mannerisms and all that stuff. So it all applies. It's all the same thing. And they do the same thing. They engage with you. If you have the passion and the energy, they have a different things. And I've gotten feedback. I've gone in to a pitch, and the feedback was, you seem nervous, you seem flat. You know, and I always seem to have some excuse, like I ran here, or I'm tired, or whatever. But
I didn't eat lunch today.
Yeah, but you can see it. It's both ways. They feed off your energy and vice versa.
Yeah, and it's a matchmaking thing, right?
Yeah,
And I really think, you just have to go through enough pitches and enough meetings, and you're going to find the right match and the right partner.
Right.
But I think most founders, I think they get nervous. I think they put too much on one meeting, right? And that's not. It's about successive meetings,
right,
to the point where, like, okay, this makes sense,
right,
you know, and this works on both sides. So, and I also think they just don't. They probably give up too quickly.
Yeah,
I see that too. So, well, I think it's about time to wrap up.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.